Hello there. My name is Matthew Lampros. I have dedicated my life to the pursuit of understanding what makes people successful at sales and how one can go about adopting those behaviors. What I've learned over time, as you know if you've watched more of others of these, is that it's most commonly the understanding of the principle at play that makes you successful in any particular aspect of sales, not knowing a technique or a trick or a behavior or a system, but understanding why something's working the way it is so that you can then work within what's happening and be successful. So today we're going to talk about how to leave a voicemail that you know is going to be returned. At the end of this video, I'm going to give you a very prescriptive answer for how to do this, but during the video, we're going to spend time talking about the principle so you understand why. The reason for that is, no matter what comes up, once you understand the principle, you'll know how to deal with it. If you have just a prescriptive answer, it may not work in every situation. So if you want just the answer, skip to the end of the video. There's the answer for how to do it. Otherwise, spend 5 or 6 minutes with us. We'll go through the principle, and you'll start being successful. So first thing you want to understand is, why is it important to be good at voicemail? Well, let's draw you, and then let's draw the decision maker, or the doctor, or the head of IT, or the head of accounting, the person that you're selling to. The other way to draw the decision maker that's probably more accurate is to draw a bag of money, or maybe even more accurate than that, several bags of money. What a decision maker actually represents is a bag of money or revenue that your company can bring in, or that you can bring in for your company. What you're trying to do is access that money. What a decision maker tends to do is block that money, and what voicemail not being returned does is it becomes a red brick wall that stops you from accessing revenue. Because you can't access the decision maker, you'll never be able to understand if they need what you have. You'll never be able to help them. They'll never pay you for that help. So voicemail obviously is extremely important, but it's not just important because it starts the sales process. It's important because it is the sales process. If you can't get a hold of people, nothing ever happens. So let's remember that. The next thing we want to talk about, obviously, is, does voicemail work? And I want to just kind of step through this for a second. I'll move quickly, but here's the thing. People say, well, voicemail doesn't work. And that's not the case. So let's look at who, if you're talking to a decision maker, who they get voicemails from. They get voicemails from their boss, from a peer, from a spouse, from a friend, the dentist, from customers and vendors, right? From a reporter. When they get voicemails from those people, guess what? They return those voicemails. The person who doesn't get a return call or return voicemail is you. So it's not that voicemail doesn't work. It's that voicemail doesn't work for you. One first step in understanding why that is looking at why those other folks are getting their voicemail return. So as we begin to dive into this principle, let's look at that. Well, they're getting their voicemail return because they have a relationship with them. They know who you are. They're getting their voicemail return because if they don't have a relationship with them, there's something positive in it for the decision maker. So it makes sense for them to return their call. They're getting their calls returned because it's timely. They're calling at a time they're not busy. They're calling at a time that they're open to taking voicemails. They're calling at a time they don't have a lot going on. If we can then start to mimic some of the behaviors of the people that are getting their voicemails returned, we'll be able to get our voicemails returned as well. So that's an important point. Let me demonstrate this another way. So you may be familiar with what are called the 4 C's of diamonds. And they are color, cut, clarity, and carat. When you're buying a diamond, they value the diamond based on those 4 elements. And the better you are in each one of those categories, the more money the diamond costs. So think of it as a scale of 0 to 10 for each one of those. The further you move towards 8, 9, 10 on those scales, the more value that diamond has. And they all have a role to play, and you could have a really, really good large diamond in carat size with terrible color, terrible cut, terrible clarity, and it actually won't be very expensive. It will be a really big diamond that doesn't look great when you look up close, but it's big, and it doesn't cost a lot of money. So all of them have a role to play in the way the diamonds are ranked. And when I think of voicemail, it's really the same thing. There's kind of not the 4 C's, but the 4 elements of voicemail. All of them play a role. If you're not scoring high on each of them, you're probably not going to get your voicemail return with a surety. But if you can score high on a couple of them that you can control, you increase your odds dramatically. So let's look what they are. The first one is, do I know you? and you're not going to do very well with that because they don't know who you are. The next one is there's something in it for me, and you can try, and that's where I think sales reps tend to spend a lot of effort, I think, in a faulty way, and promote something as positive for them. But the fact is you don't really have any idea until you meet with them to know if your product's good for them. So that's probably an area you're not going to do very well. And in fact, if you try to make it sound like there's something positive in it for them, and you don't really know anything about them, it can actually be a detriment. You could almost score negative on that. So do I know you, and is there something positive in it for me, are two of the four elements that matter for leaving a voicemail, but they're two of the four that you can almost do nothing about. The next two are really something you can do something about, and it's, is this a good time to call? Is it a hectic time, or can they listen to voicemail? Will they listen to it? Will they think about calling you back? You can do something about that. The other is your message. Is your message good and strong and businesslike, or is it a commercial? Is it attempting to pitch something? You sound like a salesperson? And you can do something about that too. So just like the 4 C's of diamonds, the higher you score on each one of the elements, the better. What we're going to do from a principal perspective is get that's what's at play here, and then figure out how the heck do we score high on calling at the right time and on the message. And once we do that, then we're going to score much higher than we would otherwise, and hopefully do a good job. So let's start with when it's good to call. So we've been at this now for 15 years, and I could just make this really simple. There are what we call golden times to call, and there are bad times to call. For voicemail, the best times to call are Monday morning, Tuesday morning, Friday morning, and Thursday afternoon. If you want to leave a voicemail that gets returned, you're much more likely to get your voicemail returned if you call Monday before 9, Tuesday before 9, Thursday after 3, Friday before 9. You can call and leave voicemails other times, but your likelihood of getting it returned is much higher going those times. So it's very simple. It's one of the 4 elements. You want to score 10 on this. Call at times they aren't hectic. And Monday morning, Tuesday morning, Thursday afternoon, and Friday morning, really good times to do that. So probably the first thing I do right away is if you really want someone to call you back that you've been trying to get a hold of that you can't, start leaving your voicemails at times that aren't so hectic for them. As you can imagine, Wednesday afternoon at 2, they get your voicemail. They've got 1,000 things going on. They're in the middle of their week. They're in the middle of their meetings. They're just not going to call you back. Monday morning, beginning of the week, much more likely for that to happen. Okay? So quick change you can make there on the hectic. The next thing is I like to talk to people about what you should do, not what you should not do. But when it comes to voicemail, there are 4 things that you should not do. There's a problem with the way that people are leaving voicemails because they all sound the same. And here are the 4 problems that I would encourage you to avoid. The first thing is don't sound like a salesperson. And one of the dead giveaways that you're a salesperson is if you give the same voicemail every time that starts to talk about your company, and you start to talk about awards you've won or people you know, or the fact that you're the new, you have this territory now and you just wanted to introduce yourself and you're taking over from so-and-so. All of that stuff makes you sound like a salesperson. And fine, you are a salesperson, but why make that your initial impression on the voicemail? If you want to get called back, don't do that. You can do all that stuff later. The other thing that's a real problem, that's a dead giveaway to your salesperson, that seems to be a huge factor in whether or not people call back, is how many times you leave your phone number. And it might sound weird to you, but if you leave your phone number twice, you're a salesperson. If you don't, you're not. Almost nobody who's not a salesperson doesn't leave their phone number twice. They leave it once. So I say it slow. It's Matthew Lamprose. I'm with Sales Wings. My number is 801-983-5900. And I know they can get that, and if they have to, they can rewind. They'll hear it. It's not a problem. They also have caller ID. No reason to leave it twice. The second thing that you don't want to do is you don't want to make this a one-way stream of information. And by that, I mean you don't want to start to leave data for them that they might have questions on that they can't ask you anything about. So the more often you provide data that talks about your product or that informs them or in any way is something that they might want to ask questions about, you're making a big error because they can't ask a question. So you've made this a one-way street of information. They can't produce an objection. They can't ask a question. They can't clarify. So what was the point of leaving it? Because you're trying to do something that you can't do. The third thing is kind of along those lines as well, and it's a major error that people make in voicemails. Never provide enough data to make a decision from. So never leave a voicemail that says, if this, then call me back, or here's what I do, I can help you, call me back. Never give them information that they can say, well, okay, let me decide whether I want that product or service, or let me decide whether or not that would be valuable to me. Because when you do that, again, they can't ask clarifying questions. They can't put up objections that you can overcome. They can't get to know you. They don't get to know your wonderful, charming, sunny personality. So there's no way for you to persuade them other than just to put some facts out there. And 9 times out of 10 or 99 times out of 100, the answer is going to be no. The real problem with this is when you call back next time, they're thinking to themselves, wait a minute, you told me what you were calling about. You said what this was, and you said call me back if you're interested, or call me back. I didn't call you back. I'm not interested. I heard your pitch. No, thank you. And frankly, they didn't hear your pitch, right? They don't know what your pitch is, but you tried to leave it on voicemail. They made a decision. The decision's made. You're not going to get a hold of that person again. So every time you leave a voicemail that asks them to make a decision, that's your final voicemail. You're never going to be able to leave a voicemail again because it's a waste of time. And then the fourth thing, more and more people are getting better at, but you want to be real careful. You remember Mad Libs? There's like this voicemail libs where people seem to have been filling out the same voicemail. You sound like everyone else. I guarantee you they're getting 20 of these a day, and they all sound the same. Hi, it's Matthew over here at SalesWings. We're an award-winning, best in industry, blah, blah, blah. I'm following up from this. We have this new white paper. We have this product thought you'd be interested in. I'm pretty sure I can save you some money. All that stuff, it's nonsense. It all sounds the same. Not only is it breaking the other rules that we've already talked about, but there's just no way to distinguish you from someone else, and they have no interest in you. So there's 4 cardinal rules that you want to make sure that you don't do. And again, I don't like to talk to people about what not to do, but these are the things that you don't want to do. So the question then becomes, okay, well, what are we left with? If we can't do that, what is a voicemail to be? Well, it's very simple. And again, let's go back to the principle here. If you go back to the 1950s, when we used to leave voicemail for people, of course there wasn't voicemail, but you used to leave messages. The way that was done is you'd call someone and they would take a message. And to make that really easy, they have this pink slip of paper called the While You Were Out slip. And you've seen these pink pads while you were out. And on that pink pad is your name, your phone number, a few common reasons you've called, and a little tiny space for a message. And that's it. From the 1950s until the middle of the 1990s, that's how we left voicemail. And if we graph the number of books and articles and blog posts about how to leave a voicemail and how to get it returned and why can't we get our voicemails returned, there were almost none of them. How do I get a return call articles or advice until about 2000. And 2000 was when everybody had voicemail, and all of a sudden nobody was returning calls anymore. Well, the reason is because we had changed the way that we do voicemail. We started to make them commercials. If we go back to the way we used to do it when calls were returned, our calls will be returned. The message component of the 4 things that matter for voicemail is to leave a very simple message, the very same way we've done it for 100 years, that the telephone has been around, and the very same way that phone calls have always been returned. Basically, you fill out that pink slip while you're out. If you try to leave a voicemail, doing all the things that we've talked about before, or in any way your message is not as simple as this while you're out slip, you're not going to be successful. So here's what you want to do. You want to very simply leave your name, your company name, and your phone number. So while you're out, my name's Sarah. I'm with Acme Company. My number's 212-555-1718. Please call me back. I like to draw the bottom of this pink slip as kind of the red velvet rope portion of the voicemail. That's the area where you're allowed to leave information if they know you, or if they've asked you to call, or they've asked for information, or you're following up. But you want to consider that pink piece of paper your template, your guide for how to leave a voicemail, and you want to consider the portion that I have roped off is inaccessible to you. You're not allowed to do that. So what I do is I say, hi, it's Matthew with SalesWings. My number is 801-983-5785. 5900, and I'll be in the office today till about 4:30. And then that's my voicemail. And guess what? People return my calls. And when we teach people this, they find a way. Now, that's my technique. But what I'm doing is I'm using the principle that I understand, that people want a message that's short and simple, that tells them what to do, that doesn't ask them to make a decision, that doesn't sound like a salesperson, doesn't sound like someone else, isn't giving them a one-way street of information. And if you can just keep it short and simple, under 8 seconds, they don't even have time to delete it. By the time I'm done with my message, you'll get your voicemails returned, and it's happening for everyone that understands this principle. So this is what I suggest. It's Sarah with Acme, 212-555-178. I'll be in the office till 5 today. You can come up with something different, but at the end of the day, the principle is only use the space on this pink piece of paper that you're allowed. Your name, your company, your phone number, maybe really quick, please call me back, or I'll call you again, or I was hoping to come by. And you get 1 sentence, 1.5 sentences on that pink piece of paper to leave something else. But that's it. And the more you go into the pink piece of paper, the less likely it is that your phone call is going to be returned. So let's avoid that. The further down this pink piece of paper you move, the higher your risk is that your call won't be returned. Notice that the pink piece of paper has one place for you to leave your phone number, not twice. Leave it once. Don't move down this pink piece of paper, or you're increasing your risk that they're not going to return your call. If you move down the pink piece of paper, it's because they know you, or because you have something, they know you and you have something positive in it for them. Otherwise, you're not allowed to use that part of the portion. So let's just go back and think about this again. For voicemail to be successful, if you want to know how to leave a voicemail that gets returned, use the pink slip, follow it as a principle, and you're going to have access to the decision makers and then access to the cash. Call at times that they're not hurried. Leave this kind of voicemail. Don't try to infringe on the other 2 components that you can't do anything about, and your voicemail returns will go up dramatically. Good luck. Internalize the principle. I can tell you how I do it, and I can tell you how other people do it, but it's the principle that matters. Voicemail does work. People do call back. There's 4 reasons why. Because I know you, and you have something positive in it for me, and you called me at a time that wasn't hectic, and your message was to the point. If you do all 4 of those things, you are 100% certain to get your voicemail return. The principle, though, is that they don't know you, and you have no idea if you have something positive in for you. And I know there's people out there saying, I know. I'm telling you, unless you've met them, you don't, because that's another sales principle. So we got to get rid of 2 of those. The only things you can work with are the principle of calling at a time that they're not hurried, and leaving a message that's to the point, business-like, and doesn't have any of the 4 things that we said you shouldn't have. All of a sudden, you get your voicemails returned. So good luck out there. It's always a pleasure to get to work with you. And call me if you have any questions. My number is 801-983-5900. Take care.